Beneath the surface of history lies a secret war, a battle waged not with guns and tanks, but with whispered codes, shadowed faces, and choices so dark they threaten to consume the soul. What if the greatest heroes never stepped into the light? What horrors hide in the silence of the unsung? Tonight, we unlock a box sealed by fear and courage, revealing the hidden threads that shaped a world torn apart. In the spring of 1938, as the dark clouds of war gathered over Europe, Helena Weiss sat in her small Vienna apartment, staring at the hastily packed suitcase by her door. The Anschluss had just swallowed Austria into the Nazi Reich, and for Helena, a Jewish woman with a sharp mind for numbers and languages, the world was closing in fast. Her family urged her to flee, but the question was where. With a ticket secured to London through the underground network, she left behind everything she had known, stepping into an uncertain future. Once in Britain, Helena's talents did not go unnoticed for long. In 1939, as Britain prepared for the looming conflict, the government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park was quietly gathering the brightest minds in mathematics, linguistics, and cryptanalysis. Helena, fluent in German and with a knack for patterns, was recruited as one of the few women to join this secretive effort to crack the German Enigma code. Life at Bletchley was intense and cloaked in secrecy. Helena worked long hours alongside other codebreakers, often under the stern supervision of men who doubted a woman's place in such critical work. But her determination and skill soon earned their respect. She became an expert at intercepting encrypted Nazi communications, her sharp eyes catching subtle variations in the coded messages. The turning point came in 1941 during the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boats prowled the seas, sinking Allied merchant ships and strangling supply lines vital to Britain's survival. Helena and her team intercepted a series of coded transmissions indicating the planned positions and movements of a U-boat wolf pack. However, the message was scrambled with a new variation of the Enigma settings, designed to confound Allied cryptanalysts. Working around the clock, Helena pieced together fragments of intercepted messages. Her breakthrough came with an insight, a recurring anomaly in the message's pattern that suggested a new rotor configuration on the Enigma machines. Once she cracked the code, the British Navy rerouted their convoys, avoiding deadly ambushes and launching counterattacks that sank several U-boats. The impact of Helena's work was profound, yet the world outside Bletchley remained unaware. The code-breaking operation was a tightly guarded secret, and no one spoke of it, even among family members. Helena's contribution to the war effort was hidden in silence. Alongside the professional challenges, Helena endured personal losses. Letters from home stopped coming. News of her family's persecution and eventual deportation to concentration camps haunted her nights. She channeled her grief into her work, believing that every decrypted message brought the Allies closer to victory. In 1943, Helena's expertise expanded beyond naval codes. She began assisting with intelligence related to the Luftwaffe and Wehrmacht troop movements, vital for planning the Allied invasion of Normandy. As Operation Overlord approached, the pressure intensified. Helena decoded critical communications revealing German troop deployments along the French coast, allowing the Allies to adjust their plans and secure a foothold on D-Day. Despite the immense workload, Helena maintained a close bond with a small circle of fellow women codebreakers. They shared stories of their lives before the war, hopes for the future, and the constant fear that their work would end abruptly if discovered by the enemy. They were aware that their efforts could shorten the war, but they also knew the dangers if the Axis powers learned how their codes were broken. As the war turned in the Allies' favor, Helena was finally permitted brief leave to visit Scotland. Walking along the rugged coastline, she reflected on how far she had come, from a frightened refugee to a pivotal figure in the clandestine war beneath the surface of battlefields. Her quiet heroism embodied the contributions of countless women whose names would remain unknown. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, Helena returned to Vienna to find her city ravaged and her family gone. She devoted herself to helping displaced persons and rebuilding the shattered Jewish community. Yet the scars of war lingered. For years, she remained silent about her work at Bletchley, reluctant to share what she had endured or accomplished. It wasn't until decades later, when wartime secrets were declassified, that Helena's story began to emerge. Interviews with former colleagues and her own memoirs revealed the vital role she played in decrypting Enigma messages. Her name joined those of Alan Turing and others in the annals of World War II history. Helena Weiss's story is not just about codes and machines. It is about resilience, intellect, and the courage to fight in the shadows. Her whispers through the encrypted messages saved lives, shortened battles, and helped shape the course of history. Through her legacy, we remember the invisible war waged behind enemy lines, one where silence was power, and every decoded letter was a step toward freedom. The city of Stalingrad lay shattered under a winter sky in late 1942, its streets turned to rubble, its buildings scarred by relentless artillery fire. Amid the chaos, Ivan Petrov crouched behind a broken wall, his breath visible in the frigid air. The harsh winter wind bit through his worn coat, but Ivan's mind was focused entirely on the mission ahead. He was a Soviet partisan leader, charged with disrupting the German Sixth Army's grip on the city, a task that had become a desperate battle for survival. Ivan had not always been a soldier. Before the war, he was a schoolteacher in a small village outside the city. When the Wehrmacht invaded, sweeping through the Soviet Union with terrifying speed, Ivan watched helplessly as his home was destroyed and his family scattered. The Red Army's retreat left behind a trail of despair and shattered hopes. But Ivan refused to surrender. He joined the Partisans, a ragtag band of resistance fighters living in the ruins and forests around Stalingrad, carrying out sabotage and guerrilla warfare. The winter of 1942 was the darkest time for the city. German forces encircled Stalingrad, aiming to capture it completely and break Soviet morale. Inside the city, civilians endured starvation, bombardment, and freezing temperatures. Ivan's partisans worked in the shadows, sabotaging rail lines, ambushing supply convoys, and sending crucial intelligence to the Red Army. Every mission was perilous. Capture meant torture or death. But Ivan faced more than just the enemy's guns. Tensions simmered within the partisan ranks. Some fighters wanted to operate independently, suspicious of the Soviet command's orders, while others accused Ivan of being too cautious. The moral lines blurred in the snow-covered ruins where betrayal sometimes came from within. One night, a trusted lieutenant vanished, suspected of collaborating with German forces. Ivan wrestled with the fear that his network was compromised. The harsh realities of urban guerrilla warfare tested Ivan's leadership. Civilians caught in the crossfire suffered greatly, and Ivan bore the weight of every loss. He remembered the young boy from a nearby shelter who died in a bombing raid and the elderly woman who gave him shelter despite the danger. These moments steeled his resolve but also deepened his inner conflict: how to fight ruthlessly enough to save the city without becoming the enemy in the eyes of those he sought to protect. In early 1943, the tide of the battle began to shift. The Red Army launched a massive counteroffensive to encircle the Germans. Ivan's partisans coordinated with Soviet forces, providing intelligence on German troop movements and sabotaging communications. One daring raid destroyed a critical ammunition depot, delaying German reinforcements and buying precious time. Yet, victory came at a cost. The city was a frozen graveyard, and Ivan's group was reduced to a handful of survivors. Food was scarce, and disease spread through the ranks. Despite exhaustion, Ivan refused to retreat. His mission was clear: hold on until the Red Army could break the siege. The final days of the Battle of Stalingrad were marked by brutal street fighting and desperate hand-to-hand combat. Ivan's partisans fought alongside regular Soviet troops, clearing buildings and rooting out snipers. The fall of the German Sixth Army in February 1943 was a monumental victory, turning the war's momentum in the Soviet Union's favor. After the battle, Ivan returned to his village, a broken but unbowed man. The devastation was nearly complete: homes burned, families lost. Yet there was hope amid the ruins. Survivors began to rebuild, and the partisan spirit lived on, a symbol of defiance against oppression. Decades later, historians pieced together Ivan Petrov's story through Soviet archives and interviews with surviving partisans and civilians. His story was not one of glory but of the gritty, complicated reality of resistance, where courage and fear intertwined, where friends became enemies, and where survival demanded sacrifice. Shadows over Stalingrad, reveals the human face of war beyond the famous generals and large-scale battles. It shows the resilience of ordinary people caught in extraordinary times and the moral dilemmas faced by those who chose to fight in the darkest corners of the global conflict. James "Jimmy" O'Connell was 21 when he first climbed into the cockpit of a Grumman F-4F Wildcat aboard the USS Enterprise. Raised on a modest farm in Iowa, Jimmy had dreamed of flying since childhood, imagining the vast blue skies as his battlefield. But nothing could have prepared him for the inferno of the Pacific War, where steel met fire, and survival often depended on split-second decisions. It was June 1942, and the fate of the Pacific Theater hung in the balance. After the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor 6 months earlier, the United States Navy was on high alert. The Japanese Imperial Navy had advanced aggressively, seizing islands and threatening Australia and Hawaii. The Battle of Midway would become a crucial turning point, and Jimmy found himself in the thick of it. The USS Enterprise was one of 3 American aircraft carriers tasked with intercepting the Japanese fleet near Midway Atoll. Jimmy and his squadron prepared for battle in the cramped hangars below deck, checking weapons and calibrating instruments. The tension was palpable. Everyone knew the stakes. The battle began with dawn's first light. Jimmy's squadron launched to scout enemy positions, flying low over the ocean to avoid detection. As they approached the Japanese fleet, anti-aircraft fire erupted like deadly rain. Despite the danger, Jimmy remained focused, his training guiding his every move. In the chaotic dogfights that followed, Wildcats clashed with Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters. Jimmy's squadron engaged fiercely, weaving through tracer fire and dodging explosions. He shot down one enemy plane, but the air was thick with danger. The roar of engines, the crack of gunfire, and the cries of comrades filled his senses. Amid the battle, Jimmy witnessed the devastating power of naval aviation. Dive bombers struck the Japanese carriers with precision, setting their decks ablaze. The destruction of 4 Japanese carriers crippled the enemy's offensive capability and shifted the war's momentum. But the victory came with a human cost. Jimmy's best friend, Lieutenant Harold "Hank" Collins, was shot down during the fight. The loss haunted Jimmy, fueling his resolve to continue the fight. Letters home carried the mixture of pride and sorrow that defined many servicemen's experiences. In the following months, Jimmy's squadron took part in grueling island-hopping campaigns, including Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands. Each mission brought new challenges: jungle warfare, kamikaze attacks, and the relentless heat of the Pacific. Jimmy learned to navigate the emotional toll of war, holding on to memories of home to stay sane. During the Battle of Okinawa, Jimmy faced one of his most harrowing moments. A kamikaze pilot dove toward the Enterprise, and despite intense anti-aircraft fire, the plane crashed nearby, causing massive damage. Jimmy helped coordinate emergency responses, witnessing firsthand the resilience of his shipmates under fire. The war's end in 1945 brought relief but also reflection. Jimmy returned to Iowa a changed man, carrying scars seen and unseen. He struggled to adjust to civilian life, haunted by memories of fallen friends and the destruction he had witnessed. Decades later, Jimmy's letters and mission logs were discovered by his granddaughter, inspiring a new generation to understand the personal sacrifices behind history's grand narratives. Pacific Firestorm captures the story of a young pilot's courage, the evolution of naval air combat, and the enduring spirit of those who fought in the vast and fiery Pacific theater. Through Jimmy's eyes, the Battle of Midway is not just a strategic victory but a deeply human story of bravery, loss, and the quest for peace amid the storm of war. Paris, 1941. The City of Light was dimmed beneath the heavy shadow of Nazi occupation. Curfews, patrols, and whispered fears marked daily life. In a small atelier tucked away in Montmartre, Marie Dubois worked at her sewing machine, the steady hum a comforting rhythm amid the uncertainty. But Marie's seamstress shop was more than a place for hemming skirts and mending coats. It was the heart of an underground resistance network. Before the war, Marie lived a quiet life, raising her 2 children and crafting beautiful garments for local Parisians. But when German troops marched into Paris, her world shattered. Marie witnessed the harsh treatment of her neighbors, the roundup of Jewish families, and the censorship of free speech. Determined not to stand by, she quietly joined the burgeoning French resistance. Using her shop as a front, Marie began hiding coded messages within the hems of dresses and sewing patterns. She trained her apprentices to deliver fabric parcels that concealed weapons, explosives, and even forged identity papers. Behind the scenes, Marie coordinated with SOE agents, British operatives parachuted into France to aid resistance groups. Her work was meticulous. One wrong stitch, one misplaced package, could lead to capture or death. The Gestapo's raids became more frequent, and the atmosphere thickened with danger. Marie's husband, Jacques, a former soldier, operated as a courier, delivering intelligence and supplies to the Allied forces. Together, they formed a small but vital node in the fight against fascism. Marie's courage was tested repeatedly. A trusted customer was revealed as an informant, leading to a raid that destroyed much of her inventory. But she rebuilt, stronger and more determined. She took in Jewish children and hidden fighters, sheltering them beneath the floorboards or in secret rooms behind mirrors. The months leading up to D-Day in June 1944 were some of the most critical. Resistance groups prepared to sabotage railways, communications, and power stations to disrupt German reinforcements. Marie's network coordinated the timing and logistics, sending encoded signals sewn into quilts and curtains. On the night of June 5, as Allied paratroopers dropped into Normandy, Marie and her team executed a daring mission to blow up a railway junction outside Paris. The explosion severed German supply lines, creating confusion and buying precious hours for the invasion to succeed. But the cost was high. Several members of her group were captured, including Jacques. Despite the loss, the resistance in Paris swelled. Inspired by stories of courage and sacrifice, civilians joined strikes and protests. When Allied forces liberated Paris in August 1944, Marie's shop reopened, now a symbol of resilience and hope. In the years after the war, Marie's contributions were quietly honored by those who survived. Her story, pieced together through letters, photographs, and testimonies, offers a glimpse into the everyday heroism of ordinary people. Threads of Resistance weaves the fabric of courage, solidarity, and defiance that helped liberate France from tyranny. Marie's legacy reminds us that resistance comes in many forms, not only on the battlefield but in the quiet acts of bravery by those who refuse to let darkness prevail. In the autumn of 1944, as Allied forces pressed deeper into Nazi-occupied Europe, intelligence reports hinted at a terrifying new weapon under development, the V-2 rocket. Unlike anything seen before, this ballistic missile promised to bring destruction from the skies with unprecedented speed and force. Captain Edward Hargreaves, a British intelligence officer, was assigned a critical mission to uncover the secrets of the V-2 before it could change the course of the war. Edward's journey began with a network of spies, scientists, and resistance fighters spread across Europe. Rumors circulated about test sites deep in the forests of Piemont, on the Baltic coast, where German engineers worked feverishly under the watchful eyes of SS guards. The V-2 was the brainchild of Wernher von Braun and his team, brilliant but morally conflicted scientists driven by ambition and fear. Infiltrating these sites was nearly impossible, but Edward's team managed to secure fragmented blueprints and reports from informants risking their lives. The data revealed a weapon capable of traveling over 200 miles and delivering a 1-ton warhead with devastating accuracy. More chillingly, the rocket's propulsion system used volatile liquid fuels, making it both powerful and unpredictable. As Allied forces advanced, Edward led covert missions behind enemy lines to capture scientists and seize documents. One daring operation saw his team ambush a transport convoy carrying V-2 components, barely escaping with the materials before German reinforcements arrived. The race against time was frantic. Every day the Nazis launched rockets at London, causing destruction and terror. The human cost of the V-2 program was staggering. Thousands of forced laborers and concentration camp prisoners were conscripted to build the rockets under brutal conditions at the metalwork factory. Edward's reports documented the suffering and deaths, casting a shadow over the scientific marvel. The arrival of the rockets over London was unlike any previous bombing raids. The silent, supersonic projectiles struck without warning, shattering buildings and killing civilians indiscriminately. Edward grappled with the implications, a weapon that heralded the dawn of modern rocketry but also introduced the horrors of long-range missile warfare. Edward's intelligence helped the Allies develop countermeasures, including improved radar detection and bombing raids targeting launch sites. In early 1945, the Allies captured key V-2 production facilities, slowing the rocket assaults. Yet the threat remained as Germany's defeat neared. Following the war's end, Edward participated in Operation Paperclip, the controversial effort to recruit German scientists like von Braun to work for the United States. The V-2's technology became the foundation for space exploration but also for the nuclear arms race that defined the Cold War. Operation Thunderclap explores the intersection of innovation, espionage, and ethics during one of WWII's final chapters. It reveals how the quest for technological supremacy came with a profound human toll and foreshadowed the era of missiles and nuclear weapons. Captain Edward Hargreaves' story is a reminder that behind every weapon lies a web of human choices, courage, desperation, and the haunting consequences of science unleashed in wartime. Some stories are buried to protect us from their truth. Yet, the shadows remain, whispering warnings through the cracks of time. In the silence of secrecy, we glimpse the cost of power and the fragile line between salvation and destruction. As the echoes fade, ask yourself, how much darkness are we willing to carry, hidden just beneath the surface? The answers may be far closer than we dare to see.